Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping right into a massive story, how a global energy crisis is creating a truly historic opportunity for Nigeria. We're going to explore how a geopolitical shock thousands of miles away could be the key to unlocking real economic leverage and independence for one of Africa's biggest powers.
Okay, let's just kick things off with a pretty startling question. I want you to imagine the main artery that supplies over a fifth of the world's energy. What if it was just clamped shut, suddenly, with no warning? What do you think happens next?
Well, here's the kicker. This isn't some hypothetical what if. We're imagining it's the year 2026, and because of a conflict spiraling out of control in the Persian Gulf, this exact scenario has just become reality. The world's most important energy choke point is sealed off. So let's really break this down. Why does this one tiny little strip of water, the Strait of Hormuz, have the entire global economy in a chokehold? The sheer scale is just mind-boggling. We are talking about 21% of the world's oil passing through this strait every single day. That's literally 1 out of every 5 barrels the world burns. It is the absolute definition of a single point of failure for our global economy.
And the immediate result? It's brutal. Oil prices don't just creep up, they explode, nearly doubling overnight. Now, this isn't just some number on a screen. It's a shockwave that smashes into every factory, every supply chain, and every single family budget on the planet.
Okay, so with that global chaos as the backdrop, let's pivot to Nigeria, because this is where the story gets really interesting. As a huge oil producer, Nigeria should be swimming in cash from these high prices, right? Well, the reality is way more complicated and honestly, a lot more dangerous.
And this right here, this is the paradox that has defined Nigeria for decades. The country is literally swimming in crude oil. It's Africa's biggest producer. But, and this is a huge but, because of a long history of neglecting its own refineries, it has to import almost all of its gasoline and diesel. Think about that. It sells its treasure for cheap, only to buy it back as a finished product at a crazy high price.
But here's the thing. To really understand the strategic move Nigeria can make in 2026, we actually have to go back in time a few years. Because this exact kind of crisis, this dangerous dependency on supply chains you don't control, it's happened before. And the lesson Nigeria learned back then is the absolute key to surviving now. And this quote, man, it just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly frames the choice Nigeria is facing. You could say history is offering the same test twice. The only question is, will the lesson be remembered this time around?
I want you to cast your mind back to 2020. The world was shutting down. For Nigeria, it was a total perfect storm. The pandemic absolutely crippled global shipping right at the moment an oil price crash gutted the government's income. The country, which relied so heavily on imported food, was staring right into the abyss. We're talking about an artificial famine, created not by drought, but by broken supply chains.
So what pulled the nation back from the brink? It wasn't some international bailout, no. It was a tough, deliberate, multi-year strategy to build up its own domestic food production. Things like the Anchor Borrowers Program, which gave loans directly to small farmers, had created this incredible local agricultural buffer that kicked into high gear at the exact moment the global system failed. And the results? Honestly, they were stunning. Building up that domestic food supply didn't just prevent a famine, it powered the entire economy. Nigeria had one of the fastest recoveries from recession on the entire continent. It proved that self-sufficiency isn't just about playing defense. It's a powerful way to generate real economic gain.
And this brings us right back to the energy crisis of 2026, because that powerful lesson from the past provides the exact blueprint for what to do now, a strategy you could call the Dangote Doctrine.
Look at this. The logic is a perfect mirror image. In 2020, the threat was collapsing food imports, and the strategic asset was domestic farms. In 2026, the threat is collapsing fuel imports, and the strategic asset is the brand new Dangote refinery. The lesson is exactly the same. Leverage your domestic capacity to gain your independence.
And what an asset it is. The Dangote refinery isn't just some big factory. It's a piece of national security infrastructure. We're talking about the world's largest of its kind, with enough capacity to make Nigeria totally self-sufficient in fuel and even turn it into an exporter to the rest of Africa, basically overnight. This is the key that unlocks real energy sovereignty.
So the path forward isn't some big mystery. It's actually a series of clear, decisive policy choices. Step 1, you mandate that Nigerian crude oil goes to this Nigerian refinery. Step 2, you price that crude in the local currency, the Naira, which immediately stops the insane drain on foreign reserves. And finally, you oversee the whole thing transparently so the benefits actually get to the people, not just a handful of insiders. And if they do this, the payoff is just massive. We're not just talking about dodging a crisis, we're talking about fundamentally re-engineering the entire economy. It means a stable supply of fuel, a stronger currency, lower prices for 220 million people, and finally taking apart the corrupt and inefficient import system that has been a drag on the country for decades. This is the very definition of strategic leverage.
But you know what? This story doesn't just end at Nigeria's borders. Because a fully firing Dangote refinery has the potential to totally reshape the energy map for the entire African continent. You see, Africa's energy paradox is basically Nigeria's, just blown up on a continental scale. The continent is rich in oil, but it exports that raw wealth and then spends billions and billions every year importing it back as expensive fuel. This crisis is the ultimate motivation to finally break that cycle of dependency.
And here it is, the pure economic argument. Instead of just selling a barrel of crude oil, Nigeria can process it, add another 40 to 60% in value, and then sell those high-value products to its neighbors. That single move transforms the country from a simple supplier of raw materials into a continental industrial leader.
So we end on this really powerful idea. The crisis in the Persian Gulf is a civilizational wake-up call. It's laid bare the deep vulnerabilities of the old way of doing things. But for a country like Nigeria, it presents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to seize control of its own economic destiny. The strategic lesson has already been learned, the hard way. The tool for independence has been built. The only question left is whether the will exists to actually use it.